Commander Elaine Porter looked out the viewport of her small ship. The red surface of Mars stretched out below. This was supposed to be a routine mission. Check the equipment at the research base, drop off supplies, and head back to Earth. Nothing special. Commander, there's something strange on the radar, said Lieutenant Greg Lewis, his eyes fixed on the blinking screen in front of him. Elaine moved closer. What kind of strange? It's big. Really big. And it's not one of ours. The ship's comm system crackled to life before Elaine could respond. A voice, somehow both musical and mechanical, filled the bridge. Earth vessel. This is Ambassador Zixtal of the Galactic Council. We come in peace and request permission to establish formal contact. The bridge fell silent. 5 crew members looked at each other, wondering if this was some kind of joke. Earth had sent people to Mars and established small research bases, but had never encountered alien life. Elaine cleared her throat. This is Commander Elaine Porter of the Earth Space Force. We accept your request for contact. The radar blip moved closer, and suddenly a ship appeared outside their viewport. It was crystalline in structure, catching the distant sunlight, and breaking it into thousands of colors. It was at least 20 times the size of their vessel. My ship will guide yours to a safe docking position, the voice said. Please prepare for first contact procedures. Elaine turned to her crew. Well, I guess we're making history today. Nancy, contact Earth immediately. Tell them. She paused. What exactly should they tell Earth? Tell them we've just met our neighbors. On Earth, in a windowless room deep beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Alan Wright stared at the equations on his whiteboard. His quantum propulsion theory had worked better than anyone expected. The test engine had achieved 98% efficiency, far beyond what should have been possible. A loud bang made him jump as the door to his lab slammed open. 3 men in dark suits entered, followed by a tall man in military uniform, Dr. Ye. Right? I'm Captain John Miller. You need to come with us right now. Alan pushed his glasses up his nose. What's this about? I'm in the middle of important work. That's exactly what this is about, Doctor. Your work just got a lot more important. Captain Miller handed him a tablet. Read this on the way. We don't have much time. On the screen was a classified message. From Mars. Alan read the first line and his knees went weak. Aliens? Real aliens? Yes, Doctor, said Miller, guiding him out the door. And according to them, your engine is what caught their attention. Light years away, in a massive station hanging in space between 3 stars, hundreds of alien representatives gathered in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The room buzzed with different languages, translated instantly by small devices. Each member wore. Ambassador Vrelnak slammed his large clawed appendage on the ancient table. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with scaled skin and 4 yellow eyes arranged vertically on his face. As the representative of the Kreth Empire, his opinion carried significant weight. The humans must be contained, he shouted, causing several smaller representatives to flinch. We have monitored their planet for centuries. They are violent, unpredictable, and now they have discovered quantum propulsion centuries before they should have. Their technological advancement curve is unprecedented. Holograms appeared in the center of the chamber, showing Earth's history. Wars, nuclear weapons, but also art, music, and incredible technological progress in just a few hundred years. Look at their wars. Vrelnax continued. Look at their resilience. They kill each other over resources, over ideas, over invisible lines on their planet's surface. And they adapt to new threats faster than any species we have encountered. They are dangerous. Counselor Alara floated forward. Unlike the imposing Vrelnax, she was small and seemed to glow from within, her translucent body pulsing with soft light. The Lumidian was one of the oldest members of the council, her species known for their wisdom and peaceful nature. We have seen aggressive species before, Vrelnax, she said, her voice like wind chimes. Remember the Dorax? We feared them too, but now they are valued members of our council. The Dorax took 300 years to progress from primitive flight to space travel, Vrelnax countered. Humans did it in 60. And this quantum drive they've developed, our scientists are still studying how they managed it with their limited resources. Another council member, a being that looked like a collection of silver spheres arranged in a rough humanoid shape, moved into the light. This was Ziv, chief analyst for the council. Our data supports Ambassador Vrelnax's concerns, Ziv said, her voice metallic but gentle. Humans are advancing at a rate 5.7 times faster than the council average. Their adaptability index is the highest we've recorded for any carbon-based life form. The chamber grew louder, as different representatives argued. Some supported containing Earth, perhaps even limiting their development through subtle intervention. Others argued for patience. Counselor Alara raised her glowing arms and the room quieted. Ambassador Zixtal has already initiated contact with the humans. It is too late for containment. We must decide how to proceed now that they know we exist. A new voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Perhaps we should invite them here. All eyes turned to the speaker, a tall, thin figure with 6 arms and skin that shifted colors like oil on water. This was Ambassador Nyla of the Valerian people, known for their empathic abilities. I sense great potential in these humans, she said, moving into the light. Yes, potential for destruction, but also for creation. They could bring fresh perspectives to our ancient order, Vrelnax hissed in disagreement. Or they could bring chaos and war to a peaceful galaxy. Zixtal, who had made the first contact with humans, stepped forward. Unlike the others, he appeared almost human except for his silver skin and eyes with star-like pupils. I have spoken with them, he said calmly. They are fearful but curious. They are proud but eager to learn. Like children who have suddenly discovered they are not alone. And like children, Vrelnax growled, they should be guided firmly for their good and ours. The council chamber fell quiet as the Supreme Counselor, a being so ancient that few knew what she originally looked like, rose from her central position. We will vote, she said simply. To invite the humans, or to isolate them. Choose wisely, for this decision may shape the next 1,000 years of galactic history. As the representatives prepared to cast their votes, no one noticed the small drone hovering in the corner of the chamber, belonging to the technologically advanced Jindi collective. They had their own plans for the humans, regardless of the council's decision. 6 months had passed since humans first learned they were not alone in the universe. The world had changed in ways both small and large. Religious leaders debated what alien life meant for their faiths. Scientists worked day and night to understand the limited technology the Galactic Council had shared. Military leaders from every nation met to discuss how Earth might defend itself if necessary. And now, the most surprising development of all, an invitation. They want us to send representatives to their council, said General Laura Hayes, addressing the United Nations Security Council. 3 humans to speak for our entire planet. The room erupted in arguments. Who would go? Which countries would they represent? What powers would they have to make decisions on behalf of Earth? In the end, after weeks of debate, 3 were chosen. Dr. Susan Rivera stood in front of her bathroom mirror, straightening her dark blue suit. At 53, she had spent her life as a diplomat, resolving conflicts that others thought impossible. Born in New Mexico to a family of teachers, she had worked her way through countless international crises. But nothing had prepared her for representing her entire species. You can do this, she told her reflection. It's just diplomacy. The stakes are just higher. Her phone rang. It was Major Frank Collins, another chosen representative. Are you ready? He asked without greeting. His voice was gruff, direct. As ready as anyone can be for meeting hundreds of alien species, Susan replied. Frank Collins had been selected for his military expertise. At 45, he had seen combat in 3 different conflicts and now specialized in threat assessment. The world's governments wanted someone who could evaluate potential dangers to Earth. Standing in his apartment, he looked at the small photo of his daughter on the desk. She was 17 now, worried about normal teenage things. He wondered what the galaxy would be like for her generation. The car will pick you up in 30 minutes, he said to Susan. Professor Johnson is already at the launch site. The 3rd representative, Professor Paul Johnson, was not a man of action like Frank or a negotiator like Susan. At 61, he had spent his life studying human cultures. His understanding of how different societies functioned made him uniquely qualified to help Earth navigate alien cultures. Now he stood at the launch site, watching technicians prepare the alien vessel that would take them to the Galactic Council. The ship was called Harmony, a translation of its actual name, which no human could pronounce. It glowed with a soft blue light and seemed to hover above the ground without any visible support. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Paul turned to see Ambassador Zixtal approaching. In the months since first contact, humans had grown somewhat used to the alien's silver appearance, though his star-like eyes still took some getting used to. "It is," Paul agreed. "How long will the journey take?" "By your measurement, about 2 weeks, Zixtal said. "Though you will not experience it as such. The ship travels through what you might call folded space." Within hours, all 3 human representatives had arrived, along with a small support team who would remain on the ship. During the council meetings, as they prepared to board, the world watched through live broadcasts. Earth held its breath, knowing that these 3 carried humanity's future with them. First Engineer Traz of the Zindi Collective adjusted the settings on his console. Unlike many council species, the Zindi resembled insects with compound eyes and an exoskeleton that clicked when they moved. Their technological prowess was unmatched, even within the advanced council. "The humans will arrive in 14 cycles," he said to his assembled allies. "We must be prepared." Around the table sat representatives from several species, all sharing one concern: the rise of Earth. "Their biology makes them uniquely dangerous," Traz continued, displaying holographic data. "Their short lifespans drive them to accomplish more in decades than our species do in centuries. They feel urgency we cannot comprehend." Ambassador Vrelnax of the Kreth nodded his scaled head. "My spies report that since learning of our existence, human weapons development has accelerated by 30%. They fear us." "As they should," said another alien, a gaseous being contained in a mechanical suit. "The Council's history with newcomers is not always peaceful." Traz raised one of his forearms. "We have reviewed their communications. Their entertainment is filled with stories of alien invasions. They expect conquest because it is what they would do in our position." The meeting continued as the secret coalition plotted. Some wanted to sabotage the human delegation. Others suggested more subtle approaches, perhaps influencing the Council to place heavy restrictions on Earth's development. "Whatever we decide," Traz said, "we must act before they gain a foothold in galactic politics. Once they have allies, it will be too late." Meanwhile, in another section of the massive council station, Ambassador Nyla of the Valyrian people met with her own group of supporters. Her skin shifted from blue to a warm purple as she spoke passionately. "I have studied the humans extensively," she said. "Yes, they are violent when threatened. Yes, they advance quickly. But they also create art that can move even non-human hearts. They care for their young with devotion. They value freedom and choice." Counselor Alara's body pulsed with gentle light. "The Kreth and their allies see only the threat, not the potential. Humans remind me of the ancient days of our own species, when we burned with such passion and curiosity." Another alien resembling a tall tree with crystal branches swayed thoughtfully. "The real question is whether they can overcome their tribal nature. They still divide themselves by regions, beliefs, skin colors. Yet they chose 3 very different representatives," Nyla pointed out. "They understand at some level the value of diverse perspectives." As the Harmony ship traveled through folded space, carrying humanity's first delegation to the stars, these 2 factions prepared for their arrival. The humans, unaware of the political storm awaiting them, spent their time learning all they could about the Council from Ambassador Zixtal. On the observation deck of the ship, Susan Rivera watched the impossible colors of folded space swirl. "Outside the viewports, do you think we're ready for this?" she asked Frank, who stood silently beside her. He considered the question carefully. "No, but we'll learn fast. We always do." From across the room, Professor Johnson watched them both. In his hand he held a small device given to him by Zixtal, a universal translator that would allow them to understand every species in the Council. The fate of Earth might depend on how well they used it. The Harmony continued its journey, carrying hope, fear, and humanity's future toward the heart of galactic civilization. The human delegation stood silently as the doors to the council chamber slid open. The room beyond was vast, larger than any stadium on Earth. Curved rows of seats rose in all directions, filled with beings of every shape and color. Some looked almost human. Others defied description. Susan Rivera took a deep breath. As Earth's diplomatic representative, she would speak first. Next to her, Major Frank Collins scanned the room with military precision, noting exits and security positions. Professor Paul Johnson's eyes were wide with wonder, taking in the hundreds of different species. "Remember," Ambassador Zixtal said quietly, "many here have never seen a human before. First impressions matter greatly." Susan nodded and stepped forward. The universal translator at her throat hummed softly, ready to convert her words into the many languages of the Council. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am Dr. Susan Rivera. With me are Major Frank Collins and Professor Paul Johnson. We come from Earth with gratitude for your invitation and hope for peaceful relations between our world and yours." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some representatives leaned forward with interest. Others pulled back as if humans might be contagious. The Supreme Counselor, a being so ancient that her original form was hidden beneath flowing robes and a breathing mask, raised a gnarled hand for silence. "Earth representatives," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "The Council welcomes you. Know that you are here on probationary status. You may observe our proceedings and speak when invited, but you have no vote at this time." Frank frowned slightly at the word probationary, but Susan gave a respectful nod. "We understand and accept these terms," she replied. Over the next several days, the humans attended council sessions. They witnessed debates about trade routes between distant systems, resolution of conflicts between species, and discussions of shared scientific endeavors. Earth was assigned small quarters within the massive station, and the three representatives worked tirelessly to understand the complex politics of their new galactic community. Professor Johnson spent most of his time in the station's archives, absorbing the history of the Council and its member species. The archives were a vast network of crystal data storage, containing millions of years of recorded history. "Amazing," he whispered as he studied the display showing the Council's founding 10,000 years ago. "So many different paths of evolution, yet so many common needs." Meanwhile, Major Collins focused on security and defense. During a tour of the station, he carefully noted that despite the Council's peaceful claims, every species maintained its own security forces. He observed training exercises and studied the weapon systems visible on docked ships. "They all talk about peace," he told Susan during their evening meeting, "but they're all prepared for war." Susan herself attended the diplomatic sessions, quickly establishing herself as a calm and thoughtful voice. Several species, particularly the empathic Valerians, seemed impressed by her ability to find compromise in difficult situations. But not everyone was pleased by the humans' quick adaptation to council politics. On the 14th day of their stay, Ambassador Vrelnax called for a special session. The massive reptilian being stood at the center of the chamber, his yellow eyes fixed on the human section. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice a low rumble, "I propose immediate restrictions on human technological development. Our monitoring shows they have already begun adapting ideas from our shared technology." Susan rose to respond, but Vrelnax continued before she could speak. "Their weapons research has accelerated. Their quantum computing projects have advanced, 5 years in just months. If left unchecked, they will achieve military parity with mid-level council species within decades rather than centuries." Now Susan stepped forward, her face composed despite her anger. "Ambassador Vrelnax speaks as if advancement is a crime," she said clearly. "Earth does not develop technology for conquest. We develop it because we must. Our world has limited resources. Our lives are short. Innovation is not our choice, it is our necessity. The chamber grew quiet as she continued. We do not seek to dominate. We seek to survive, to understand, to connect. Yes, our history is stained with conflict, but we learn from our mistakes. Ambassador Neela of the Valerians moved to support Susan. I have spent time with the humans. Their emotions are strong but genuine. They feel fear, yes, but also great hope. We should not punish a species for adapting quickly to new information. The debate grew heated. Several factions formed quickly. Those who supported Earth's right to develop naturally, those who feared human advancement, and those who remained undecided. It was the most animated discussion the humans had seen in the usually formal council. Professor Johnson watched with fascination. They're afraid of us, he whispered to Frank. Not of what we are, but of what we might become. Frank nodded grimly. Fear makes species dangerous, human or alien. Later that day, the human delegation was invited to a private meeting with the Monitoring Committee, a group responsible for tracking developing worlds. The committee room was smaller than the main chamber but no less impressive, with walls that seemed to be made of flowing water. Please be seated, said analyst Ziv, the metallic being composed of silver spheres. We have data to share. Holographic displays appeared around the room, showing Earth's technological progress over the past century. Your species has achieved, in 100 years, what takes most species 500, Ziv explained, her metal components shifting slightly as she moved. This is your computing advancement. This is your medical science. This is your propulsion technology. Each graph showed the same pattern, a steep upward curve far exceeding the normal rates of development. The most concerning aspect, continued another committee member, a being with 6 eyes arranged in a circle, is that the slope increases after each major conflict. You advance faster through war. Susan looked at the data carefully. We advance? Through necessity, she corrected. War is one form of pressure, but not the only one. Climate change, disease, resource limitations, all have driven innovation on Earth. There is another factor, Ziv added, displaying a new set of charts. Human lifespan. Your species lives approximately 80 of your years. Many council species live for centuries, some for millennia. Your brief lives create urgency that drives rapid development. Professor Johnson leaned forward with interest. You're suggesting our mortality is our advantage? It is both advantage and danger, the 6-eyed being replied. You will surpass half the council members within a century. Your adaptability is your greatest strength and our greatest concern. The meeting continued late into the night by Earth standards. As the human delegation finally returned to their quarters, they understood more clearly the complicated position Earth held in galactic politics. They're going to vote on restrictions tomorrow, Susan said quietly as they reached their rooms. We need to change enough minds before then. Frank looked at her with serious eyes. And if we can't? She had no answer for him. The future of Earth hung in the balance, and they had less than 1 day to save it. Susan Rivera could not sleep. The vote on Earth's restrictions was only hours away. She paced her small quarters, trying to think of a way to convince the council that humans were not a threat. Her diplomatic skills had never faced such a challenge. Soft chime indicated someone at her door. She opened it to find Professor Johnson and Major Collins waiting. We had the same idea, said Frank, entering the room. We need a plan. They spent hours discussing strategy, but every approach seemed inadequate. The council's fear was too deep, built on thousands of years of galactic history they barely understood. Maybe we're looking at this wrong, Paul said finally. We're trying to prove we're not dangerous, but that's impossible. Any species with technology is potentially dangerous. Susan nodded slowly. So instead of denying our potential threat, we need to demonstrate our potential value. Exactly, Paul agreed, but how do we do that before the vote? Their answer came in the most unexpected way. The emergency alarms woke them 3 hours later. Flashing lights and a pulsing sound filled their quarters. Ambassador Zixtal's voice came through the communication system. Earth delegation, please. Report to emergency session immediately. They rushed to the council chamber where chaos reigned. Representatives shouted over each other while holographic displays showed a distant star system. The Supreme Counselor raised her hands for silence. A rogue pulsar beam has struck the Lentari system, she announced. Specifically the agricultural world of Velos Prime. Billions of lives are at risk from radiation and heat. Susan looked at the displays more carefully. The Lentari system was home to several species that produced food for a quarter of the Council worlds. Velos Prime was the largest producer. We have formed an emergency response committee, the Supreme Counselor continued. Standard protocols dictate a 40-cycle planning period followed by resource allocation and 40 cycles? Frank whispered to Paul. How long is that in Earth time? About 2 weeks, Paul replied, checking his translator. Susan stepped forward without being recognized, breaking protocol. Supreme Counselor, with respect, 2 weeks is too long. The people on Velos Prime need help now. A murmur of disapproval ran through the chamber at her interruption. The protocols exist for a reason, human, said one representative. Hasty action leads to wasted resources. And delay leads to lost lives, Susan countered. Earth has experience, with rapid disaster response. Ambassador Vrelnax rose from his seat. This is exactly the behavior we fear from humans. Impulsive, disregarding established procedures. This is a council matter. But Counselor Alara's glowing form moved to Susan's side. Perhaps we should hear what the humans suggest. Their perspective may offer solutions we have not considered. The Supreme Counselor considered this, then nodded. Speak, Earth Representative, but be brief. Susan took a deep breath. Thank you. Major Collins has military experience with emergency evacuations. Professor Johnson has studied historical responses to disasters, and I propose that we contact Earth immediately. Our ships equipped with Dr. Wright's experimental shields might help. Vrelnax laughed, a harsh sound. Human ships? Your technology is centuries behind ours. But different, Frank said, stepping forward. Our shields were designed with flexibility in mind, not just power. They can be reconfigured rapidly for different types of radiation. The Council debated briefly, and to the humans' surprise authorized them to contact Earth. They also granted the human delegation access to the emergency response team. For the next 3 days, no one slept. Frank broke all protocols by commandeering a communication array to contact Earth directly, bypassing the usual channels. Professor Johnson dove into the archives, studying previous pulsar incidents and the Council's responses. Susan worked the diplomatic angles, building a coalition of species willing to act quickly rather than wait for the full planning cycle to complete. She found allies in the Valerians and Lumidians, both empathic species who felt the suffering on Velos Prime deeply. Within 72 hours, Earth had dispatched its small fleet of 7 ships, all equipped with Dr. Wright's experimental shields. The Council regarded these vessels with a mixture of amusement and pity when they arrived. They were crude by galactic standards, clearly the work of a young civilization. But Captain Olivia Martinez, commander of the Earth Fleet, paid no attention to the condescension. My crews can work continuously for up to 36 hours if necessary, she told the Council engineers. Our shields can be reconfigured in minutes rather than days. Tell us what you need. The Council engineers, used to working with perfectly optimized but rigid technology, were skeptical, but they had no choice. The standard shield configurations were failing against the unusual radiation pattern from the rogue pulsar. Captain, Martinez and her team worked alongside the reluctant Council engineers. Where the aliens worked in set patterns, the humans improvised. Where Council engineers followed established designs, Earth engineers tried wild variations. That will never work, said a tentacled engineer as Lieutenant Kim rewired a shield generator in a way that violated standard procedures. Maybe not, Lieutenant Kim replied without looking up. But the standard way isn't working either. So what's the harm in trying? To everyone's surprise, the hybrid shield design worked. It was ugly, inefficient, and would probably fail within days, but it would last long enough to protect the evacuation ships. As the Earth vessels moved into position around Velos Prime, the Council watched in astonishment. The human ships formed a protective screen, their reconfigured shields absorbing the deadly radiation. Council evacuation vessels safely passed through the corridor they created. Back on the Council station, Susan, Frank, and Paul monitored the rescue operation from the Emergency Command Center. Ambassador Zixtal approached them quietly. "You have done the impossible," he said. "No Council engineer would have attempted such a solution. They would consider it too imperfect, too temporary." "Temporary is all we needed," Susan replied. "Sometimes the perfect solution takes too long. Sometimes good enough for now saves more lives." Zixtal's star-like eyes studied her. "This is the human advantage, isn't it? You accept imperfection as a step toward improvement, not as failure." On the main display, the evacuation continued. Council representatives who had called for restrictions on Earth just days ago now watched as human ingenuity saved billions of lives. "They solved in days what our best minds couldn't approach in weeks," whispered Chief Scientist Cole to Ambassador Vrelnax, not realizing Susan could hear them. "And they're still in their technological infancy." For the first time since arriving at the Council, Susan allowed herself to smile. Earth had proven itself not just capable but essential. The vote on restrictions would still happen tomorrow. But now, everything had changed. The Council chambers had never been so full. Representatives from all 317 member species crowded the vast room. The emergency seats, usually empty, were filled with observers who wanted to witness this historic vote on Earth's status. The human delegation sat together, tired but hopeful. The rescue mission at Velos Prime had succeeded beyond all expectations. Over 3 billion lives had been saved due to Earth's quick action and adaptable technology. Now they waited to see if this would be enough to change the Council's view of humanity. Ambassador Vrelnax still led the opposition. Despite Earth's heroics, he and his allies remained convinced that humanity posed a long-term threat to galactic stability. "Let us not be swayed by one fortunate intervention," he argued from the central platform. "Yes, the humans helped save Velos Prime. Yes, their adaptability proved useful in this specific crisis. But these same qualities make them unpredictable and potentially dangerous." Susan watched the large reptilian carefully. His arguments were logical from a certain perspective. Humans were unpredictable. Their rapid advancement could disrupt the careful balance of power that had maintained peace for thousands of years. Ambassador Zixtal took the platform next. His silver skin gleamed under the chamber lights as he addressed the Council. "My esteemed colleagues," he began, "I have spent more time with humans than anyone in this chamber. I was first to make contact. I have observed them closely for months, and I propose something unprecedented." A murmur ran through the crowd. Zixtal was known for his moderate views and careful judgment. "I propose accelerated membership for Earth, with humans taking an active role in Council reform." The chamber erupted. Some representatives shouted in protest while others buzzed with excitement. The Supreme Councilor had to signal repeatedly for quiet. "Explain your reasoning, Ambassador," she requested when order returned. Zixtal gestured toward the human delegation. "We have existed in relative peace for millennia, but peace without growth becomes stagnation. The Velos Prime crisis exposed weaknesses in our system: rigid thinking, slow response times, fear of imperfection." He paused, his star-like eyes scanning the chamber. "The humans remind us of our own forgotten dynamism. They see problems differently. They act decisively. They value results over procedure. We need this energy." First Engineer Traz of the Zindi Collective rose immediately. "This is outrageous. Accelerated membership would give them access to technology centuries beyond their development stage. They would certainly misuse it." Susan stood up, feeling it was time for humanity to speak for itself. "With respect," she said, addressing the entire chamber, "Earth does not seek your technology. We seek partnership. We have much to learn from you, and yes, perhaps you have things to learn from us as well." Professor Johnson joined her. "In my studies of your archives, I've noticed that major council reforms happen only once every 1,000 years. The last was 973 years ago. Perhaps the time approaches naturally for new ideas." Major Collins added his perspective. "You fear our adaptability because it seems chaotic to you. But in a changing universe, Adaptability is not just a strength, it's a necessity. The council debated for hours. The Xindi collective threatened to withdraw from the council entirely if humans were given such influence. The Kreth Empire suggested a military blockade around Earth's solar system for the safety of all. But as the discussion continued, more species began to support Zixtal's proposal. The Valerians spoke of the emotional intelligence they had sensed in humans. The Lumidians reminded everyone of other species who had once been feared but became valuable council members. Chief Scientist Cole, who had witnessed the Earth fleet's ingenuity firsthand, provided detailed analysis of how human problem-solving approaches differed from standard council methods. They do not seek perfect solutions, he explained. They create adequate solutions that can be improved over time. This iterative approach has advantages our more rigid methods lack. Finally, after what felt like days to the exhausted human delegation, the Supreme Counselor called for a vote. On the matter of Earth status, she announced, we have two proposals. First, Ambassador Vrel Nax's proposal for technological restrictions and limited interaction. Second, Ambassador Zixtal's proposal for accelerated membership and integration. The voting process was unlike anything the humans had seen. Rather than raising hands or using electronic systems, each representative's seat glowed with different colors indicating their choice. As the colors spread across the chamber, it became clear that Earth's defenders had won, but only by a narrow margin. The Council has decided, the Supreme Counselor declared. Earth will be granted a voting seat on the Council, conditional upon sharing its innovative approaches and accepting certain limitations on military development. Susan felt a wave of relief. It wasn't perfect. There would still be restrictions. But Earth would have a voice in galactic affairs. They would help shape the future rather than be controlled by it. As the human delegation prepared to return home with news of their changed status, Professor Johnson made a fascinating discovery in the ancient archives. He found records of a species that had vanished long before the Council formed. Among their few remaining texts was what appeared to be a prophecy about the young ones who would awaken the stars from their slumber. It could be coincidence, he told Susan and Frank, but the description matches humans remarkably well. Major Collins remained vigilant even in victory. We've made powerful friends, he said quietly as they boarded the ship that would take them back to Earth. But even more powerful enemies, the Xindi and the Kreth will be watching for any mistake we make. Susan nodded. Then we'll have to be careful and prove them wrong. Back on Earth, Dr. Alan Wright's team had already begun working with scientists from allied council species. In his lab deep beneath the Nevada desert, humans worked alongside beings from worlds hundreds of light years away. Their combined efforts were yielding breakthroughs that neither could have achieved alone. 1 month later, Admiral Elaine Porter, formerly Commander Porter, stood on the observation deck of Earth's first Council Standard starship. Next to her, Captain Olivia Martinez watched as the construction teams made final adjustments. We have so much to learn, Admiral Porter said softly. Captain Martinez smiled. But also much to teach. That's what they fear most. Not that we'll destroy them, but that we'll change them. The stars stretched out before them, no longer distant, and unreachable, but filled with both promise and peril. Earth had taken its first true steps into a larger universe, and nothing would ever be the same again.